Meet Baby X.
This is Baby X, so she's basically an autonomously animated virtual infant. All of her behaviours are generated on the fly by neural networks running live, and so she's seeing me and listening to me and responding to what I do. So she's going to start wondering what I'm doing and starting to get upset because I'm not paying attention to her. So I need to calm her down, but I have to talk to her like a real baby. It's okay. Hey.
Baby X is driven by a virtual nervous system. So let's take a look at what that actually means.
What we're looking at here is Baby X's virtual anatomy, which is all controlled by her virtual nervous system. So that's controlling everything that she's looking at, all of her expressions. It's even controlling her breathing rate and her heartbeat. We can make it more transparent and we can zoom out and see the whole model. All of the motion that you're looking at is controlled essentially by her brain model, which is driving her limbs, her facial expressions. We can see the facial nerves through here. Let's take another level deeper and you can see her virtual brain model here. You see the brain stem, which is basically responding to all kinds of sensory input, and it's affecting the attention of the model.
Baby X can also interact with a virtual web page.
This is what she's looking at here. So she's trying to draw a heart.
And her creative abilities are surprising.
Let's play some piano with Baby X. And I can interact with her too. Good girl, okay.
Hello everyone. How many of you thought that was really creepy? Oh my God, wow. Well, the deployment of Baby X in 2004 by Soul Machine was a big turning point in my product career. Not only because of the proximity of this AI to human behaviors, and if you can get the slide up, awesome, thank you. Not only because of the proximity of this AI to human behaviors, but because it also coincided with a very pivotal point in my life, which was the birth of my daughter. And at this point, I was going to show you those two, so we'll just wait because it's a really cute picture, and I'm a very proud mom. So let's wait for this. You know, AI by now would have figured out how to get everything up on the screen and not made it awkward, but let's see. How are we doing, Fred? Awesome? We still don't see it. Awesome, yes. So this is Baby X, produced by Soul Machines. But as I mentioned in 2014, this was a turning point for me. Because in 2014, my daughter, Baby Z, was born. Her name is Zia, but obviously very, very inspired by Baby X, we called her Baby Z, production of Navrina Singh. So as you can imagine, as a technologist, I was so excited about the frontiers of AI and the potential use cases that this AI would create. But as a new mom, I was super petrified by the ethical implications of what this AI could do, because not only it was emulating our behaviors, but it was also emulating human values. And this was a time that I would say that I really paused and started to think about what does responsibility in AI really mean? And especially as product leaders, what does accountability mean for the products that we are creating? What we make makes us. So let's pause here and think deeply about this. What we make makes us. You know, products are not just a bunch of features which are wrapped up in user stories, or the persona needs which are encapsulated in PRD documents. But products are an embodiment of our values, of our opinions, of our ethical implications. And that is really important to understand, because these ethical results become really pivotal in this new AI world. And as we all know, AI is already disrupting the current industries. It's creating brand new set of industries as well and enabling all new use cases. Now, if you look here, you can see all the amazing set of industries that are adopting AI at a very fast pace. And the reason this has been possible is because of three things: accessibility to some amazing amount of compute, really powerful algorithms, and access to large amount of data sets. But when I look at this, I think the question that I always have is anything which has been built for the scale, for the speed, really requires critical examination of its impact. And this is the core question that I've been asking myself over my entire career. And in the past 2 decades, I've had the amazing fortune to work at some amazing companies like Qualcomm and Microsoft, build some great products. Mobile and IoT is missing because it's all in your hand. But I think the key point here was, in this product journey, Baby X really was a critical point for me. And the reason it was a critical point was primarily because I recognized that technology is always in service of our story. And it's really important for us to understand as product leaders that whether that technology is going to show up as a tool or it's going to show up as a weapon in that story is going to be determined by our values. So today what I'm going to share with you, and Clemence has done a great job talking about some of the foundational pieces in AI, especially bias. But I'm going to take you to the 10,000-foot level, where based on my product experiences, I've sort of come up with a set of core principles that is driving the way I approach responsible development of AI. And as I take you on this journey, I will try and bring pieces of my journey along, bring some case studies, and also share some core learnings from that so that you can take it back to your organizations, your teams, and to yourself, so that you can start thinking about responsible AI, at least the way that I have been thinking about, and then build it for your organizations. Now, the first principle is really around human-centeredness. Now, here the key thing is this is not a new principle. All of you product leaders here have used design thinking for building products. Now, for the longest time, we've always centered on the human needs and what we really want to bring to the table. The reason this has become really important and critical in the AI age is because there is a massive amount of noise in AI. And there are questions being asked: what is real, what's not real, what can I actually build, what can't I build? Where does AI bring unique value and where it doesn't? And that's why it's really important for us as product leaders to go back to our core and to go back to the first principles and think about the human need that we are trying to solve. So, this quote is really close to my heart because I think it centers us as product leaders. If you aren't aligned with human need, you're just going to build a very powerful system to address small or perhaps a non-existence problem. Now, this is really important, as I mentioned, for us to go back to first principles as we are thinking about development of AI. So a couple of years ago, I had the utmost privilege to work at Microsoft on a product where we were trying to unleash intelligent chatbots in the customer service domain. So as we went along our product exploration journey and started having conversations with some of the big enterprises, Walmart, Macy's, HP, etc., we started to realize that their core focus was how do we reduce cost in customer support? And so we took that hypothesis back and we said, okay, if that is the key goal for all these organizations, what we are going to do is we are going to bring our best-in-class AI and we are going to unleash these amazing intelligent chatbots so that they can actually reduce their cost. But what was the key turning point in this journey was my team went to Southeast Asia and India, and we got to spend some time at call centers there. So as we sat in these call centers having conversations with human agents who are like taking calls one after the other, and they are like every day, day in and day out, hearing complaints from customers who want refund, who don't like the product, who hate pretty much everything about the company, and they're like trying to make sure that these customers at the end of the call feel like someone heard them. So what was really surprising about these call centers, after we had spent a couple of weeks there, was these agents loved their jobs. And love is not something I've heard in customer support. So this was the first one for me. But what was very interesting for us was that as we started to think about these customer agents in these settings, their focus was how can I solve a customer's problem very quickly and very effectively. But they were not really focused on how can I reduce the cost. So we went back to the drawing board and realized that our initial hypothesis of really building this smart AI, because we could and we had the assets, really needed to shift to how could we make these call agents and these support agents, superhumans in call center. And that for us was a big aha moment, because the product that we ended up creating drastically transformed customer service. So going back to first principles, the key learnings for us was, again, align on human need. It's very important for you as product leaders to think about, do you actually need AI? Or do you really just need to solve a problem, and can that problem be solved without AI? The second key thing that you really need to think about is aligning on purpose. And I'll share a very quick story. When we did the first preview of our product with some of the customers that I mentioned, it was very interesting that we had this two set of customers, one who loved our product, and the second one who literally were like, sorry, we don't want to sign a contract with you. And the key distinction between these two was one of the companies was thinking ahead. They were thinking about the future of work. They were thinking about how they are going to reskill their workforce. They were thinking about how can I take my human agents away from these mundane, boring tasks and make them more strategic and let chatbots deal with these boring, mundane tasks. The second set of customers were really just thinking about the bottom line. How can I reduce the cost today? So as product leaders, it's really important that when you're creating products for market, make sure that your alignment with the customers is on the purpose, because this purpose determines not only the KPIs, but it actually sets the culture and the tone where your product is going to thrive and be used. And the third learning was, it's a little bit more AI-centric, because I think given the infancy, I still say we are at a very early stages of AI, there's a question that we have in our heads: when do we use AI for augmentation versus when do we use it for automation? And I think this is a really important point, because if you bring it back to the problem that you're trying to solve, things become very clear. And in my product journey, I have found that anything which is dull, anything which is dirty, and anything which is dangerous, all these jobs are actually really suited for AI. So as you are trying to solve the problems in the areas that you're looking at, I think this is going to be an important lens for you to think about. And then the second key thing is augmentation. One of the areas that I'm spending a lot of time now on is thinking about who we are going to be in this new future that we are creating for ourselves. Are we all going to be product managers in the next 10 years? Or is there going to be a new job category that is getting created? So as I think about that, this augmentation, leveraging technology as a tool, is really front and center for me. So I hope that you can take these principles back and think about the products that you're solving for, but again, really focus on the human need. The second key principle, and again, Clemence referred to it, but trust. Trust is such a pivotal human trait. So let me ask you a question. I'm going to give you a scenario right here to see who's awake right now. So if you were to make a decision and you had two options, one was a decision being made by your friend that you've known for 20 plus years, and that person has all the expertise in the world, and second, by a machine who is just using data. So show of hands, who would always trust the decision made by their friend? Okay, and who will always trust a decision made by a machine? Awesome, I've won, that's awesome. And actually I agree with both the sets, because it's really contextual. It really depends upon the situation that you are in, and you will choose one or the other. But one of the things I wanted to just step back and ask you to reflect on, the reason the friend analogy is so pivotal is because you can go back to the friend and ask them guiding questions and ask them why they made the decision, and they will be able to come back with answers. They will be able to come back with reasoning. They'll be able to come up with the assumptions that they made, which actually went into making that decision. Today, where we are with AI systems, many of them are black boxes. We are not able to open them up, even though there's a lot of work being done in explainability, transparency, fairness in these systems. It's very early stage. So most of the deployments of AI right now are in a black box. So how can you trust something which is a black box and you don't even know how you're making a decision? So as you think about trust, one of the core things that I would encourage you to think about is how do you build trust with somebody? It doesn't happen overnight. You go back and forth with that individual. You understand their strengths. You understand their weaknesses. And so exactly the same with AI systems, what we found is that trust doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take time. It's going to take input from the users. It's going to take feedback and make sure that we are providing it the right parameters. I'm going to take you back to 2014. Now in 2014, Brisha Borden was on her way to pick up her god sister from school. And then she saw this bike, which was unlocked, so she decided to take it out for a spin. So as she is riding this bike around, she realizes that it is too small for her, so she decides to put it down. And suddenly she hears a voice coming from the back loudly, "Hey, that's my kid's bike." And there's this third bystander who ends up calling the cops. So Brisha is now convicted for petty theft for the total cost of the bike, which was $80. Now, a year prior, Vernon Prater is another person who was convicted for a crime because he stole a lot of tools from a local Home Depot, which was around $86. However, there was one key difference between Brisha and Vernon. Vernon was a person who had convicted multiple crimes prior to that. He had in fact served a 5-year sentence in jail as well. And what was the worst and the odd thing that happened when both of them showed up in court? What they found out was there was a software being utilized at the court, which is basically a risk assessment software, which judges all over the country are using to figure out what is the risk profile of the individuals who are showing up in court. And what that software did was actually position Brisha at high risk of potentially committing a crime, even though this was a first misdemeanor at the age of 18. And Werner was a very, very low risk. Now, I don't know how many of you followed this journey and the story, but 2 years later, we found out that this software had misrepresented the information. Brisha has never reoffended, and Vernon right now is in jail serving a sentence of 8 years because he's a repeat offender. Now, the thing that I'm trying to highlight here is there was a risk assessment software that was utilized in the courtroom, which was using facial recognition technology. And this facial recognition technology was not very accurate for women and for people of color. And that is the reason that Brisha was at such a high risk rather than Vernon. The other key thing was that this facial recognition system was trained on data which was exclusively targeted for white people. So going back to the question of trust, when you have a black box and you don't know exactly what you're feeding it, and it's actually getting used to make important decisions about someone's innocence or guilt at the highest court, I mean, that should really give us a pause. So one of the key learnings as you start going into your AI journeys, especially for trusting by design, is really think about what is the source of the data that you're using and how you're labeling that data. Because at the end of the day, this is foundational piece to AI. And if you as product managers don't know where this data is coming from, you will not know what you're including and not including. And that brings us to the next point, which is recognizing exclusion. Right now in the AI world, we are thinking a lot about who is included, who are we incorporating, where is this data coming from? But the conversation that is really missing is who's being left out? So just in the case of facial recognition system, one of my favorite researchers is from MIT Media Labs, Joy Buliamani. who's created Algorithmic Justice League. And there she is front and center of this facial recognition debate because we are recognizing that these systems are getting deployed in cities, it's getting deployed in prisons, it's getting deployed in retail stores. So very, very important to recognize exclusion. And the last thing in the development of AI that I think has become a really important piece for me as I help my teams build the next generation of product is to really bring education to the consumers. Help users calibrate their trust. What can AI really do? What it can't do? Setting that expectation up front with your customers is really, really, really important. So I've been asked to power through it, so we are going to go directly to power by exclusion. Very quick story. How many Indians here? Just raise your hands. Yes, I'm being biased, but there's a reason behind it. So I get a call from my mom who's based in India. She loves to shop online. And this is a couple of years ago, and she goes, "Beta, I really can't find any action shoes for your dad online." And I was like, okay, that's weird. Like, I asked her about the product she's using and what's really going on. So a little bit of context for people who are not from India. We have about 650 million mobile users in India, and most of them are using speech recognition technology to not only do online shopping, but also to send SMSs back, etc. So when I get this call from my mom, what's really interesting is she's used some colloquial words in that, and she's using exactly those same words to feed into the system. Action shoes. By the way, action shoes in India refers to sports shoes or running shoes. So what we realized was, in partnership with this e-commerce giant, that the models that they were using in India were trained on US data and not on the Indian data. And this was a realization for us because once we retrained those models and brought in the cultural context, my mom could actually say, "Hey, find me action shoes," and she found the perfect pair of running shoes for her. So as we think about inclusion, which I think is really important for us, is first and foremost build inclusive AI teams. Think beyond the traditional engineers and data scientists. Think about incorporating writers and ethicists and policymakers into your conversations, because not only can they help you identify bias, but they can also instill that empathy that is really essential in this new AI world. The next thing is really help your customers in the co-creation process because they are aware of the problems that they're trying to solve. And the last one is a little bit very close to my heart because I'm sure everybody has used DevOps for building products. But one of the things that's needed in AI is what I call intentional DevOps. You can't really just go through the motions of building software. You have to bring in ethical retrospection into your entire process. So I hope that you can walk away from today thinking about principles that would adhere to your company, to yourself, to your products. And hopefully my journey has inspired you a little bit to create that sense of urgency as you think about building AI products. Because it's really, really important for product managers right now. And especially because I see you guys as the gatekeepers of the future that you've not only envisioned, but also created. So I hope that you will build responsibly because I hope you remember what we make makes us. Well, thank you very much.